Hi, I'm Micah Halpern. Thank you for joining me today as I do some thinking out loud. Our first segment is called Background Briefing. The first thing I've been thinking about is the Jewish calendar. Like Jewish life, the calendar pulsates. They have a metabolism of their own, unlike any other calendar, unlike any other community. The cycle of the Jewish year heaves and sighs from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows. There are moments of intense introspection, such as Yom Kippur, and moments of pure happiness, like Purim and Chanukah. The year is punctuated with the three pilgrimage holidays that celebrate the centrality of Jerusalem. In days of yore, on these holidays, Jews world over would travel to Jerusalem and offer their sacrifices at the Holy Temple. Jerusalem was more than a symbol of centrality, much more. It was the very center of Jewish life. The one place where 3 times a year Jews would gather to pay tribute and to celebrate the blessings of being Jewish and honor their God. Then there are times, moments of national mourning and overwhelming sadness, times when we commemorate the destruction of the temple, the days when we fast, forcing us to connect and relate to the destruction of Jerusalem and her temples. That devastation, first in 586 before the Common Era BCE, perpetrated by the Babylonians, then again in 70 CE, Common Era, this time perpetrated by the Romans, were devastations that shaped Jewish life, shaped our celebratory moments and our other memorials. We Jews are a funny, complicated lot. At one of the happiest moments of our lives, under the wedding canopy, the chuppah, we break a glass to commemorate the destruction of the temples in Jerusalem. Our history, however, is not frozen in time. And now, right now, we're in the midst of the season of modern remembrance. Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Day of Memorial, Remembrance Day, the day on which we memorialize those who died in the defense of Israel and in terror attacks. Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Memorial Day, memorializing the over 6 million Jews who perished simply because they were Jews. Are days of memory, of modern memory, of Jewish memory. From Passover through Yom HaAtzmaut and Yom Yerushalayim, Israel Independence Day and Jerusalem Day, which celebrates the reunification of Jerusalem in 1967. The Jewish calendar is filled with memory devices. These special days are dedicated to historical events that many Jews have first-hand memory of. Each of these days is planned with activities that stimulate memory that can, at the same time, transmit those memories to younger generations and then to future generations. Jews need to think about memory. We Jews need to remember. The expression born out of the Holocaust in today's world commands us to remember. Zachor, remember. Over Passover, we remembered that we were once slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. We recounted the 10 plagues that God brought upon the Egyptians and that forced them to let Pharaoh's reign of terror that brought us out of Egypt and eventually into Israel. We count 49 days of the Omer, and we remember that God gave the Torah to Moses at Mount Sinai on Shavuot. Similarly, on the Holocaust Memorial Day, we remember not only the horrors of the Holocaust, but also the brave revolts and the resistance that took place in the face of horrific atrocities. On Yom HaZikaron, we remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice fighting for Israel and those who died in terror attacks perpetrated by those who want to erase Israel, to wipe us off the map. Yosef Chaim Yerushalmi famously wrote a spectacular book, a tiny, tiny book entitled Zachor, in which Yerushalmi explains that Jews revere memory, not history. Every year I reread this book. To my mind, Zachor should be the staple of every Jewish bookshelf and taught in every Jewish school. Zachor keeps me honest. The gift of memory, of collective memory, is not to be underestimated. As Yerushalmi teaches us in Zachor, history and memory are not one and the same. We transmit memory to our children, not history. Historians are constantly tweaking what happened and when. But the memories that we transmit stay the same. Our memories are not concerned about which Pharaoh enslaved or freed the Israelites. Our memories are only concerned that we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. Avadim hayinu leparo b'Mitzrayim. When history is in sync with Jewish memory, that is all the better. But even when history is not in sync with Jewish memory does not change to accommodate the new historical approaches to events. Like individual family traditions, communal Jewish traditions have continued for generations and will continue for future generations. It does not change, but it can be modified. And one day soon, I believe, that Jews around the world will have a codified community-wide way to commemorate and to mourn, to remember generation after generation the monstrous events that changed the lives of so many beginning on October 7th. Coming up next, Points of View. First up is a column from the Wall Street Journal from April 25th, 2025. It is authored by Ruth Weiss. It is entitled, "Harvard is an Islamist Outpost," subtitled, "For decades it nurtured resentful leftists, and anti-Semitism united them in a common cause." Weiss gives history and insight. She is and always was unabashedly pro-Israel and pro-Jewish. She is and has been an extremely strong and positive voice for Jews for decades. She is a hero. This is how she begins. "I taught at Harvard from 1993 to 2014, and I don't think the federal government's threats will be effective at changing the university's culture. Harvard's leaders don't yet understand the danger that culture poses to the country or why it required intervention. On September 11th, 2001, the Islamists of Al-Qaeda attacked the United States in a suicide mission that used American planes as their instruments of destruction. On October 7th, 2023, Hamas Islamists exploited Israel's openness by invading the country, massacring civilians, and kidnapping others. Jihadists use these new forms of warfare against those they can't conquer by force. What concerns us here is their capture of elite American schools as outposts. Weiss now explains how Harvard became involved in the wrong way, supporting the mass murder of innocents. She writes, "Harvard became directly implicated on October 8th, 2023, when Undergraduate Palestine Solidarity Committee issued a statement endorsed by more than 30 student groups that asserted the Israeli regime was entirely responsible for all unfolding violence. Students for Justice in Palestine declared on October 12th a day of resistance and had a toolkit ready for encampments and demonstrations that spread beyond campus. SJP praised the unity of Intifada and resistance and declared the Palestinian students were part of this movement, not in solidarity with this movement. In 2001, there were no such support groups for Islamists at Harvard." Just a bit of history of Harvard's mistakes. Weiss recalls the craziness of how Harvard embraced the wrong side with great verve. She writes, "In the 1990s, black campus groups were hosting Afrocentric and Nation of Islam speakers who agitated against whites and Jews. In 1992, Professor Henry Louis Gates Jr. warned, 'This is anti-Semitism from top down, engineered and promoted by leaders who affect to be speaking for a larger resentment.' To this grievance coalition were added groups of Marxists, anti-capitalists, anti-colonialists, anti-imperialists. In 2011, Occupy Wall Street encampments were allowed to close Harvard Yard for several months. Today's Harvard, by the way, knows that it has gone way too far, but does not know how to solve the problem. And it will not be easy. And this is how Weiss continues. In a letter to the Harvard community, President Alan Garber acknowledges valid concerns about rising anti-Semitism and pledges that Harvard will continue to fight hate with the urgency it demands and federal law requires. Harvard's record provides ample evidence against this claim. Campus coalitions for jihad count on liberal administrators to accommodate their assault. Weiss now explains that this issue has been around for a long time. She writes, "In 2007, I began warning successive presidents and deans that academic standards were being violated by the substitution of anti-Israel propaganda for a comprehensive program in the Center for Middle East Studies. They acknowledged the problem but refused to address it, as long as other institutions took Muslim money and ignored the war against the Jews. Why should Harvard be holier than the Pope?" Now Ruth Weiss shows just how deep the issue is in the governance of the university. She writes, "Ideological anti-Zionism governed not only the Center for Middle East Studies, but also the School of Public Health and the Divinity School, and figured in departments ranging alphabetically from anthropology and African American studies to the Weatherhead Institute of International Affairs, and academically from music to the medical school. Harvard undertook a similar review only under pressure from Congress." Weiss now explains that the steps Harvard took were in the wrong direction and sent the wrong message. She explains, "The university had taken steps to prevent campus unrest by curtailing Jewish and Christian presence. The Semitic Museum, established by Jacob Schiff in 1907 to make the same point as the Abraham Accords about the common sources of the three religions, was renamed by Harvard the Museum of the Ancient Near East, and the only vestige of Schiff's intention remains in the carved stone above the entrance. Archaeological projects in Israel were discontinued, and museum collections that once centered on the Bible and Jerusalem were refocused on the pyramids. The Harvard Divinity School restructured its curriculum to reflect that it was no longer a Christian or Unitarian seminary, but a pluralistic religious studies program." Weiss concludes explaining that Harvard made the wrong decisions from the start and continued to make the wrong choices today. She writes, "Just when Harvard's proud heritage should have been strengthened, biblical studies were degraded, and its traditions put on the defensive, Christianity even more than Judaism. Islamicism was on the rise against America in decline. There are still good people and programs at Harvard, and I am grateful for my time there. In an ideal world, the government wouldn't micromanage universities. But if Harvard shirks its responsibilities to shore up the foundations of America and allows itself to be hijacked by an Islamist-inspired grievance coalition, why would it expect any support from the government?" As always, wonderfully written and conceptualized. There is not much hope. Weiss presents a very dismal portrait of a once great institution. Next up is a column by Adam Scott Bellows, published in Ynet, April 27, 2025. The column is entitled, "Syria Might Join the Abraham Accords That Should Make Iran Very Nervous." Subtitled, "Should Damascus agree to peace with Israel? It wouldn't just be another diplomatic deal, but a geopolitical earthquake that could redraw the entire regional map." The title tells the entire story, and if it's true, it's certainly an earthquake. This is how Bellows begins. "Syria, yes, Syria, the same country that launched the wars, hosted terror groups, and served as Iran's puppet, might be on the verge of making peace with Israel. If that sounds impossible, welcome to the new Middle East." According to credible reports, Damascus is exploring what once seemed unimaginable, joining the Abraham Accords. If it happens, this won't just be another diplomatic deal. It will be a geographical earthquake that could redraw the entire regional map. Bellows is correct. This news is very big if. But even ifs sometimes have an impact on the Middle East landscape. Bellows continues, "Let's not sugarcoat it. Syria has long been one of Israel's most bitter enemies. It invaded in 1948. It shelled northern towns from the Golan Heights. It allied with Hezbollah and took orders from Tehran. For decades, the mere mention of peace with Israel was enough to spark protests in Damascus and outrage across the Arab world. Now everything has changed. Again, Bellows has hit a chord. The Abraham Accords are significant, and Syria joining would be a huge step. Syria might be the biggest domino, even bigger than Saudi Arabia. There's no doubt in my mind if that's the case. Bellows writes, the Abraham Accords signed in 2020 by the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain, followed by Morocco and Sudan, shattered the whole myth that peace in the Middle East had to wait for the Palestinian approval. Instead, Arab nations began to realize what Israel already knew. Peace with Israel means access to innovation, security, cooperation, and economic growth. Syria may be next, and if it is, it will send a quick message. The end of using Israel as a scapegoat is over, but don't expect this transformation to come without resistance. There are two major dominoes left standing, Turkey and Iran. If Syria flips, Iran loses its corridor to Hezbollah. It loses leverage, it loses relevance. That's why they'll do everything to stop it. So will others. And that's the final truth Americans need to hear. You'll know who the enemies of peace are by watching who tries to kill this deal. Whether it's a terror group launching rockets or a Twitter activist crying apartheid from the safety of Brooklyn, the playbook is the same. Sow outrage, block progress, and preserve the past. In his conclusion, Bellows explains that the new Middle East is different. It's based on trade. But the past is over. A new Middle East is emerging. One built on trade, tech, tolerance, and peace. The next likely signatory, Saudi Arabia. And after that, who knows? But if Syria, the poster child for anti-Israel hostility, is willing to come to the table, then no one has an excuse anymore. And that's exactly what Iran fears. Thank you, Adam Scott Bellows, for a spectacular column, one filled with hope. And if Syria can do this, anyone can. Coming up, commentary through cartoons where pictures tell the story. I want to show you 7 cartoons today. The first cartoon is about Harvard. Harvard is hugging a dragon named racism. Harvard says, "Hands off my teddy bear." That is as if to say, the comfort and warmth of racism helps sustain and protect Harvard, helps it keep Harvard, Harvard. This next cartoon compares the Red Scare to the red, black, white, and green scare, the communist supporters versus the Palestinian supporters. Senator Joe McCarthy is depicted as then saying all Soviet sympathizers are dangerous commies. Today, Trump is saying all Gaza sympathizers are dangerous anti-Semites. This next cartoon is a mandolin in the shape of Syria. The strings are breaking and the pegs look like soldiers. The cartoon is entitled Israel and Syrian Minorities. It's about the Druze who've been so badly oppressed these last few weeks in Syria at the hands of the Syrian forces. Next up is Bibi on the face of a globe saying, "I changed the face of the Middle East." It appears as if the face of the globe is scarred with stitches and damaged. The cartoonist is saying, yes, Bibi destroyed the world. That's how Bibi changed it. Next up is a cartoon where Bibi is destroying the hostage deal by throwing people into a meat grinder, and they come out pulverized. This meaning is obvious. The artist left nothing to the imagination and called this cartoon Gaza War Meat Grinder Netanyahu Hostage Deal. This final cartoon is entitled Gaza War Cycle, Israel Destruction Tank Circle. Tanks are in a circle in Gaza, and one poised on the top is a tank ready to shoot. In a moment, more of my own perspective and a few predictions. Yunus Hashem Hanina, a 44-year-old Jordanian citizen residing in Orlando, Florida, has been sentenced to 6 years in prison for threatening to attack an energy facility over its support for Israel. During June and July 2024, Hanina attacked various businesses in the area, breaking glass doors, leaving threatening notes, and stating he would blow up all of America, especially companies supporting Israel. Authorities said that this was a personal terror campaign by one individual intended to instill fear for ideological reasons. The Los Angeles Police Department announced the arrest of 3 students during a pro-Palestinian demonstration at UCLA campus. According to police, one student attacked a security guard, while 2 others were detained after resisting orders to disperse. The protest marked 1 year since the establishment of protest encampments across U.S. campuses and included a march, road blockades, and an attempt to screen a documentary on the subject itself. University officials stated that the right to protest is protected, but not at the expense of public order and student safety. NYU University, New York University, has designated 31 law school students as persona non grata due to their participation in pro-Palestinian protests and pro-Hamas protests, blocking their access to campus facilities and final examinations. The school administration is requiring these students to sign a document waiving their right to protest as a condition for their return. The students argue this violates disciplinary procedures and constitutes selective punishment. The United States Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, said in a speech at the United Hatzalah tribute event at the Museum of Tolerance on Independence Day that, and I'm quoting here, while we celebrate Israel's right to exist in security and freedom, Iran's supreme leader is probably meeting with his people to plan how to murder all of Israel's people. Huckabee added that, I'm quoting again, tonight Israel celebrates its sovereignty and its right to exist securely and freely in its land, undisputed sovereignty over Jerusalem, the capital of the Jewish state, a capital that will remain undivided for all eternity, unquote. Thank you, Ambassador Huckabee. Lishi Miran Lavi, whose husband Omri Lavi is still being held hostage in Gaza, addressed Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at a rally in Sha'ar HaNegev, saying, I would appreciate if you would sit with me so I can explain that victory over our enemies means returning the hostages. As long as our enemies hold hostages, they defeat us every single day. She further told the Prime Minister, know that there is no security, no recovery, no rehabilitation, no victory, and no independence as long as they are there. The war is the means, not the goal. When I read this the first time, I teared up, I welled up. U.S. President Donald Trump spoke about a meeting he held with several hostage survivors in Washington. He said that out of the 59, only 24 were alive, and today I understand it's probably not even that number. Young people just don't die. They're resilient, but they don't survive. They couldn't breathe. They were in completely enclosed spaces. 23 U.S. Congress members have approached the Wikipedia Foundation demanding increased oversight of Wikipedia following claims that anti-Israel bias and anti-Semitism from its editors. In their letter, the petitioners wrote that there is a concerning lack of enforcement of editing rules and called for increased transparency and prevention of foreign influence in entities like Hamas and Iran. The request was sent following an Anti-Defamation League report that revealed coordinated attempts to edit content against Israel. The Druze of Syria have been brutally attacked over the last few weeks by Syrian forces. Israel has begun to offer support from air and to give weapons to help them defend themselves. Many of those Druze in Syria have first cousins living in Israel. That's how close they are. And these cousins have successfully argued the case to defend the Jews of Syria. Rachel Goldberg-Polin, mother of Hirsch Goldberg-Polin, who was kidnapped on October 7th and killed in Hamas captivity in August, said that the president's traditional diplomatic corps reception that Hirsch was held alongside 5 other hostages who were murdered with him in the airless tunnel, 160 centimeters, which is 5 feet 3 inches high, 60 centimeters wide, which is 23.5 inches wide, 20 meters underground, without electricity and plumbing. Hirsch weighed 53 kilo, which is 126 pounds at the time of his murder. She added that the hostages were found dirty after not showering for months. Hirsch was shot many, many times in his hand after his other hand was blown off on October 7th. We've been thinking out loud about a lot today. Now that you know what I've been thinking, let me know what you're thinking. Email me at micah@jbstv.org. Tweet me at Micah Halpern. Tell me what you think. Before we end, let me leave you with one piquante piece of information. During the torch-lighting ceremony in Jerusalem on Mount Herzl, Agam Berger played violin accompanying Dudu Fisher. Berger was kidnapped on October 7th along with 4 other young women who were IDF lookouts. Agam was held captive for 482 days. She refused to do any work on Shabbat. Agam is a violinist. Here, she is playing with one of Israel's most famous singers and cantors, who starred on Broadway as the Phantom in Phantom of the Opera. The song is entitled Et Achi Mevakesh, My Brother I Ask. It's a song about yearning, about separation, about trying to find a way.
Et achai anochi mevakesh, Hagida na li, איפה הם רואים? את אחי אנוכי מבקש, הגידה נא לי, איפה הם רואים? את אחי אנוכי מבקש, הגידה נא לי, איפה הם רואים?
Thank you for thinking out loud with me, Micah Halpern. Let's think out loud again next week on JBS.